Welcome to episode 18 of the Route 281 podcast. Today's guest is Carl Walker Metzgar, our state rep here for Somerset County. Grateful to spend time with Carl today and get to know a little bit more about his role as our state representative. So we greatly appreciate Carl's time today, and after talking with Carl, I could definitely tell he has his finger on the pulse of the residents here in Somerset County. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button, comment, let us know what you think. And also you can find these episodes on Spotify. Enjoy the episode. Anyway, this is episode 18, and today I get to sit down with our state rep, Carl Metzgar. Thank you for being here, man.
Thanks.
Appreciate
Thanks for having
it. Yeah, so, like I said, this is just a casual conversation, but it is good. I'm so grateful you're here to take the time to sit and talk with me. It just humbles me when somebody's like, yeah, I'll come and sit and talk with you for an hour, and everybody's busy. But, I mean, it's just important for our residents and listeners to get to know, people like yourself and all these guests that I have on, because everybody has an experience or a life story to share, and we're grateful to live in a really awesome place. We're truly blessed to live here in Somerset County, and I think you'll attest to that. But there's so many awesome people around, and I'm just a genuinely curious person, and so I see like a guy like you, and I want to know what you're doing. You know what I mean? And I want to know how you got into it, and how does that fit your lifestyle and your family and things like that. So we are grateful to have you as our rep. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that. I'm just glad that you're a guy with common sense, and I feel like that does represent people in our area. We're grounded, and we care about each other and our families, and just kind of glad to have you representing us.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite the honor. I get to, farm kid from Berlin, and I get to go down and push the button for 65,000 people down in Harrisburg, and it's pretty lucky that I get to do that. So I take that seriously. I mean, it's quite an honor, it really is. And you're right. I mean, we have a unique area, and you have to try and preserve our way of life, but we also want to have some, an economic development plan that we can go forward with. So there's a balancing act that we have to do there. So that's always, difficult.
Excuse me. We had a little power surge right before we started, and I just noticed our lighting. Whenever did you notice that the lighting changed?
You're going to get the glare from the Carl Metzgar haircut here, though, if you're not careful. So.
I'm on my way there, Carl. No worries. I realized that you and I have something in common. We were born the same year.
Is that right?
Yep.
Boy, we're old.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't seem like that long ago that we graduated high school, and I think we have some family ties.
Yeah, we do.
Through the Metzgars?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so my mom was a Barkley.
Yep.
And then, I'm not sure. I think my Aunt Joanne married a Metzgar.
Yeah.
Bob Metzgar.
Prolific group, so the Metzgar clan. So,
yeah.
There's a bunch there, and I think that's a lot of Somerset County. We all have some relation there, or at least a good many of us do. So it's a small town. I mean, it's our county, and I think that that's one of the things I try and do is as I go to Harrisburg, trying to convey our way of life. It's very difficult. I still remember the first time I went down to Harrisburg. There was I ran as raising beef cattle, and that was part of my campaign side. But there was another representative from suburban Philadelphia down there, and she was kind of giving me a hard time about raising cattle and the cruelty of that as a beef farmer. And as she was doing it, she was eating a cheeseburger, and there was like that kind of disconnect with reality.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the challenges that I think we have is that, they think that coal mining is evil, some of those people that I have to work with in Harrisburg. But, for us, it's a way of life. It's a way for us to make a living. But then, it also keeps the power grid running, especially on the steam coal side. And then, of course, on the metallurgical coal side, it's, making America, a strong country, hopefully more with American steel in the near future. But, I think that's the challenge that I have is trying to take our way of life and making sure that, suburban areas around Philadelphia in particular understand why we're important to them as well. And because, they have a very different approach, to life than we do. So.
Yeah, I can imagine, and it's important for people to travel and see, to get a new perspective, and even because if you haven't been into the city and you really maybe take this for granted sometimes, but.
Well, and that's I try and
vice
talk to
versa.
Yeah, I try and talk to young people from Somerset County because I think sometimes that there's a inferiority complex that they have about versus people in the city that have maybe a different lifestyle, and they think that we might be inferior in some way. And I try and tell them I think that as you get down there and like I see this cross section of Pennsylvania with 203 representatives, and you see we take for granted here that everybody knows something real about real life. You have a flat tire, you can change your tire. Mm-hmm. That's something that I think all of us sort of just take for granted that we can do that. Yeah. I would say more than half of my colleagues in the General Assembly, if they got a flat tire in the turnpike, they'd have to call someone.
Yeah.
And so both the inability to plan and the inability to actually accomplish the task are two things that we take for granted. You're going to be able to have the tools necessary to do that, and you can do it.
Yeah.
They can't. And so to me, I think that we maybe have to have a different perspective, or at least the young people have to have a different perspective. No, we're actually probably better because we know things that they don't, important things that make us survive in the event that something dramatic happens. And so I always kind of look at it, that maybe we should have a very different perspective instead of an inferiority one. So that's one of the things I would probably say to the young people is like, make sure you understand you probably have more on them than they have on you.
Yeah. I've never really thought of that. But I think you're right in the fact that some kids do have that inferiority complex over what they think they're missing out, but it is an appreciation that you gain over time for this place and the self-sufficiency aspect of living around here. And you think your parents are crazy for a while, and then you realize, oh well, now I know why he split all that firewood all those years, or now I know why he was a farmer, or. So.
At the end of the day, we have a better way of life, and I think our young people know more important things, and sure, the people in urban Pennsylvania could be niche dwellers and they know a lot about something. I think we're in the position where everybody knows something you don't, so treat them that way accordingly. Right. There's always something to learn from every person you meet, but boy, I just have a ton of faith in the kids of Somerset County actually know a lot of things, and they discount it as if it doesn't matter. And that's one of the things when I go to a school, I try and talk to them about that, because it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, likewise. Mm-hmm. Too long.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. This power outage has got my fridge beeping. Can you hear that?
No, I didn't even notice it.
I'm going to take care of that because it's going to drive me nuts the whole time.
Is this a commercial break, Tim?
Yeah. Okay, we're back with a word from our sponsor. So maybe just I want the listeners to get to know you. Tell us about how you grew up, and a little bit about your home, and you're married with what you said, 5 kids.
Yeah, I think so.
God bless you.
Yeah, no, I grew up in a small farm outside of Berlin. My dad came from a farming family, but the farming world being what it was, and in the time whenever he was going out on his own, it was he was a telephone man. My mother was a secretary, and then we'd farm on the side, and so I got all the formalities of growing up as a sort of a farm kid, trying to take care of all those things and getting that work ethic. And that's one of the things I think we could probably do better, is that every kid maybe should take one summer and have to stack hay on top of a hay mound. There's no work quite like that. Right. And that those formative things, I think, made me a lot who I am today. So I mean that's where it was. And then whenever I got out of high school, I kind of wrote some letters to some of the schools to see if any of them would take me, and especially ones that we could drive to. And so I ended up at Frostburg State.
Oh, okay.
And then I somehow convinced Duquesne to let me into law school. So went into law school there and came out and started my own practice actually here in Somerset. And it was about that time that I don't know, Daily American. Of course, now it's been bought by USA Today, and it's a different newspaper. And I think that's part of the reason why I think your podcast is important, is that you're out there trying to convey news in maybe a different way, get people to know a little bit more about the people who work for him, like myself, or that we live near with, Dr. Kraushaar and others that you've interviewed. I think it's very important. So you're the new media to some extent, and I think that's why I'm here today. Is I think this is a good thing. Back then, of course, the Daily American, covered some of the stories, and it was like above the fold, very important article, state representative retiring. It was Dr. Bastian was retiring. It was a big news item, and so I was kind of joking with some people that I was going to run for state representative, and I was a mere 26 years old and had just kind of embarked on my own journey in life at that point, and a couple days later, I got this call from some of the powers that be in politics. And they said, from Harrisburg, and they said that, they heard I was running for state representative, and I was just quiet. I didn't answer them. And they said, well, we want you to know we have someone else chosen for that, and you need to get out of the race. And I'm pretty bullheaded. And so anyhow, and at that point, Discover Card had given me a new credit card. So I kind of got my buddies and my Discover Card, and we ran a race, and just we worked hard and were able to win. And so that's kind of how I got into the political realm. And for me, I just don't think our founders ever really intended it to be a career.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, I try not to make it the sole occupation of my life. Like I want to make sure that I have a real job. And so that's how I kind of view it. And so I'm always sort of ready to leave. And the rationale behind that is that, now the special interest in politics, being what they are, they have a lot of money to spend, and they're interested in things. And so if it's your job, and it's human nature to be scared to lose your job.
Yes.
And so the special interests have enough money that they could take you out if they really wanted to. But I think it makes some people afraid to do the right thing. And so for me, if I'm not in this, that's not the end of the world.
Right.
And so I'm able to have some autonomy to do what I think is right. And I like telling people in Harrisburg that I don't work for them. I work for 65,000 people back home.
Right.
And so that gives me that opportunity to do that. So that's kind of how I've operated with it. And it's been challenging. There have been times like a few years ago they were trying to enact, and did successfully, unfortunately, enact the largest fuel tax in the country. And that's still rising today. So every time you renew your vehicle, your truck registration, it increases, and you're like, how did that happen? Well, it was all because of that fuel tax increase. That was part of it. And so we have these huge tax level. But for me, that was one of the biggest fights, and probably one of the worst losses for me. I was so invested in trying to stop it, and we stopped it a number of times, and I think they ran that bill 3 times in one session to try and get that fuel tax done. It was so much money, and the powers that be behind it, and the special interests were very much interested in it, and I just didn't think it was right. We had some of the highest corporate taxes, we have some of the worst regulatory environment, and then they want to make the highest fuel tax in the nation. And, a third of that money was going to mass transit, which is something I know we're going to talk about later today, about the state budget and the mass transit funding and, what they're trying to do today. But for me, that mass transit has really no help for us here.
Right.
Why should I subsidize that whenever the ridership is only 17% of the people are actually paying? And that's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, sometimes you don't win, unfortunately, and that's, again, I think that showing that power of those special interests is that they have an enormous amount of money and influence, and that's something that we've got to find a way to try and fix in politics.
Yeah. If you follow if you follow DC, and you can see these things happening on a grand scale, and you maybe tend to pay attention more, but the same type of thing happens at the state level.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to a lesser extent, obviously, but I mean, it's a, a microcosm of, I think, that DC politics. But, I'm glad I don't have to go to DC. I mean, I think that's a real mess. But for me, the state level and things we're concerned about here, I mean, for me, energy policy is probably where I live and breathe. I mean, you can't be an expert in everything, but for me, I spend a lot of my time on that energy policy side and trying to figure out where we're going with that. But we're blessed to live in a state where we're the second or third largest producer of electricity in the country. I think that's probably one of the ways that we can capitalize on our if we wanted to be successful and increase our success as a state and an economic driver. That's probably the key to it. Mm-hmm. But we haven't been doing that lately. So that's one of the issues I'm sure you're going to talk about then.
Yeah. Coal comes to mind first to me, but is that our main energy source?
No. Pennsylvania, of course, has been the victim of a number of bad policies, both coming from the federal government and what we call PJM, the grid. Mm-hmm. So the grid covers from Chicago to New York City essentially, and we're in that grid. And Pennsylvania is the engine in that grid because we produce the electricity. We're the largest producer in that.
I didn't know that.
But PJM has a member voting block that controls pricing and does some things, and so Pennsylvania is subject then to those votes. And so what PJM does is they've historically for the past 15 years done some extremely poor planning that they're essentially baseload generation. So think about a nuclear generation facility or a coal generation facility. That baseload generation, it's always churning out cheap, reliable power, just churning it out. They made the pricing such that it actually was under the cost that it took to produce it. So they penalized them for being cheap baseload generation. And then they were rewarding things like solar, wind, things that were not that cheap baseload generation. And they were giving them essentially the greatest pricing. And then there's another component which they call peak shaving, which is where they'll pay like a hospital to turn on their dirty diesel genset. Not that I'm against diesels, but compared to a nuclear facility, it's dirty. They pay them to turn that on in that highest peak period to keep the grid from crashing. Well, of course, all of those policies have come home to roost, coupled with then the Obama-era anti-coal regulation from the EPA that forced those power plants offline. And so that's caused this huge shift away from those nuclear and coal generation side of things. And now we're really married to natural gas facilities. And again, I'm pro natural gas. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of pro all of the above. I'll take anything, but I don't want to subsidize things, I guess is what my positioning is. So if it stands on its own, sure. But at the end of the day, the challenge with natural gas is that we still have our home heating, like in the cities and the towns, on natural gas, and now we have our electric generation on that. And so what you see is whenever you have those cold snaps, those two converge, and you can have yourself in a crisis very quickly. Yeah. So that's one of the side effects of those bad policies from PJM and the feds have now jeopardized our grid. And then couple that all with the fact that we have these data centers coming online that really want the electricity and they want a ton of it. Now we have a supply problem in addition to, which causes a cost problem. And that's why everybody's seeing their electric rates rise, is because we don't have the supply, because those baseload generators are gone that made that cheap, reliable power. And now we have even more need than we ever had. Right. And so any capitalist can tell you that's a problem. Right. So that's where that electric system's at. We're still one of the probably the third largest producer in the country, though, Pennsylvania is, even with all that being said. And so if you had to ask me what would be the way that you could make Pennsylvania's economy go, I would say that rather than selling our electricity into PJM and then buying it back, we would keep our cheapest electricity, and the biggest user of electricity is actually the manufacturing base, which is, for me, where I would like my economy to be, founded and a strong foundation in manufacturing. I think that if we would buy our own power back and have the cheapest electricity in the country, you'd see the manufacturing base come back in droves, and you couldn't probably buy a house in Pennsylvania because everybody want to buy a house here because there's so many jobs here.
Yeah.
So that's I think the key to our success economically. That's obviously not the easiest thing to untangle
Right.
because we're part of PJM and there's some advantages to being in it, but at the end of the day, I think that would be a key to our success economically. And if you wanted a long-term plan to really make Pennsylvania run, that's where it's at, because we already have the power.
Yeah.
It's just whether we sell it to Chicago first and then buy back whatever else is left, and that's what we're doing now.
Oh, that's incredible. I didn't know that. So, I mean, as far as manufacturing, I know, what type of manufacturing do you think that our area could support?
Well, I mean, I think that's somewhat unlimited, but again, you have to have a reason for them to come, and that's what I keep fighting against, is that the regulatory environment is just overwhelming in Pennsylvania. I mean, to start a business here is so difficult. And, the challenge with governing in a state like Pennsylvania is that you have Somerset County and you have Philadelphia County. I mean, we're very different. And so sort of like a mirror image of the struggle that's in Canada right now. Everybody talks about, Canada, will they join America, 51st state, all of those things. And part of the reason behind that is that you have a population center essentially that's running that country, that their values don't necessarily match with the rest of the people that live in the vast majority of the landmass of the country. We have a similar thing in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, to get over those hurdles, like coming here to Somerset County and it should be much easier to start a business here than maybe even Philadelphia. I mean, I'm all for them trying to figure out what they want to do down there, but I would really like that we are able to do what we want to do here. And we're different. I mean, it's different. Water runoff in an entirely cement and asphalt area, like in an urban area, it's very different than here. If you're trying to put a facility in the middle of a field, there's certainly enough soil to try and catch the water that's coming off of a roof there. And I think we kind of have to treat like things alike and different things differently. And so that's where we need to have a different approach to the regulatory structure. And if we can get that, I think that helps. Again, the tax structure helps us too, and then that energy component where we would get that. I just think it will open the door to all of it if we could fix those issues. But I ask my colleagues and the governor and others that why would you start a business here whenever we have these high corporate taxes, the poor regulatory environment, second or third highest fuel taxes in the country? What makes you come to Pennsylvania? And right now it's location, because we're in the Northeast corridor and we are the keystone for a reason. But you can only rely on that so long, and I'd really like to see us be the focus of that.
Yeah, it seems that as right now with the current administration in D.C., it seems like they really want to decrease their size, which puts a lot more on the state. Is that true? Like, so as the federal government decreases, state governments take on more maybe responsibility, or their representation matters more. And so, like, you take for example, just you can state like New York and a state like Florida, two very different things, and we're kind of in the middle. So what's the challenge there so that we don't become like New York, or how do we stay valuable as a state? Like, do you know what I'm getting? Is that making any sense at all? Like, is that true when that happens, as we decrease the federal government, which is good in my mind, then the states have more power, and then, like you said, the challenge where you have completely different opposite ends of the spectrum here in Somerset County versus county out towards Philadelphia or Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the federal administration, they're creating state state rights just by shrinking government, or in the alternative, making that shifting that authority to the states. And I think that's probably a reflection of how the founders really intended it. Whatever your political affiliations, I think it's important to remember that this was a conglomeration of states, each of which wanted to desperately hold on to their rights for a reason. Mm-hmm. They wanted their own ability to rule. And I guess my fear in Pennsylvania is, elections do have consequences. The way that the legislative maps are drawn in Pennsylvania, which that fight is going on in Texas right now, if you're following it. But we're in a position where, our legislature is very divided. We're in a one vote swing in the House. There's one vote majority for the Democrats right now, which is very difficult to govern with.
Oh, I can imagine.
And so that creates a lot of excitement and turmoil.
Oh, I'm outvoted here in my house. I live with 4 girls, so it's so it's all there over the highway.
You better learn. You do what you're told.
Yeah, I've got to learn to be a politician here at home at the house. But that's got to be tough.
It's very tight right now, and the Senate's on a similar razor thin margin. So, it becomes difficult to govern, and that's why, as of today's recording, we're in a budget standoff. We were in session this week, and it's not been pretty. And then the personalities are certainly showing between all the parties that are there, and I've been through a couple of them now, so I know a little bit how it works. But this one's spicy.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the political landscape is just in general more spicy. Yeah. Everywhere, but so it's not even the state government's not immune to it, huh?
No, it isn't, and there's a lot of hollering on the House floor, and again, that's part of the process. I mean, I think that even in the Founders' Day, things were pretty wild. I mean, they were dueling with each other then. So I mean, it's not maybe it's less
down
bad
there.
No, we're not. We haven't been dueling yet. So,
but it could come to that if this budget doesn't go.
I don't know how the gun control people do the duels, but I mean that could be interesting. But that's one of them. But no, I think our budget standoff is largely, and this goes across the board. I mean, the budget standoff is. It's not necessarily Republican versus Democrat as it is maybe like a urban versus rural or suburban versus rural. I actually think the urbanites, so like downtown Philadelphia and Somerset County, we have a lot in common. I found a lot of commonality there. If something happens at 2:00 in the morning in downtown Philly or in where in Markleton, you better be able to handle your affairs until because you might be a while till you can get some help. Mm-hmm. I think there's more in common there. It's whenever I think we get into the somewhat imaginary world of the gated communities surrounding some of the urban areas and that suburban area that there's like such a skewed worldview. The reality doesn't hit them because there's money, there's gates, there's really good police protection. There's a lot of things that we don't enjoy here. Urban areas don't have either. And so I think, again, we have a lot in common with the truly urban area. The suburban area is the part where I think we have some education to do of, your plans won't work. Like the thought process of that we can, live in this utopia, that's not a real thing. Mm-hmm. Like I laughed that they said that there's coyote problems in urban areas and coyote problems in Somerset County. I mean, we kind of have some interesting commonalities there. Yeah. So it's just a weird thing that we have things in common that, and again, I found a lot of support from the urban areas. So there's bridges that we can build there.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
I think as a taxpayer or whatever, you hate to see that so often. Mm-hmm. Like there's got to be 10% out here, 10% out here, and really can the other 80% come together with common sense, like to do what's best for the state of Pennsylvania and that other. And I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's probably like 40, and 20 in the middle that are trying to work together, but.
It's difficult. I mean, we're trying, but there is a polarization that's occurred in the past couple of years in particular, and I don't care what you want to blame it on, but it used to be that you're arguing over money, but now it's and again, I don't disagree with it. I mean, now we're arguing sometimes over the at least from our perspective, the very survival of your way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so each side very upset sometimes, and then sometimes the other side wants you, in prison or dead. And it's not like you're just arguing over money anymore. It's an existential argument.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where we've gone from a polarization standpoint that makes it difficult to, how do you get a budget done with someone who wants you to be dead?
Yeah.
And
wow.
and that's not good.
No.
So, that I think is a challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how to pull back on the stick and recover from that at this point.
Yeah, I don't know either, because it seems like once you get there, how do you bring it back? It was like it would have been easier not to go there in the first place.
Sure.
I think me personally, I tend to pay attention more to the D.C. and the federal
Mm-hmm.
landscape, but that for a state like Pennsylvania that has so many resources and so many beautiful places and some good cities, you just hate to lose that.
Yeah.
You hate to see the infighting. You want everybody to get along, but that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
But yeah, I think people should pay attention because, like you said, elections matter, and local elections, everything down to your school board and on up,
Mm-hmm.
It matters. The people you put in to represent you want them to be like-minded, and I guess that's, like you said, that's what you see in Democrat-run cities. That's what people vote for. It's what they get. So, you talk a little bit about the gerrymandering going on. Does that happen here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it happens. I mean, the drawing of legislative districts is definitely a political thing. It's a law. So we actually, it's a law, a bill that, we pass into law. And so that's how it happens. What happened a couple of years ago is the probably more troubling part is that, so we pass a law, all of the, let's just say, it says all of the townships of Somerset County reside in the 60th legislative district. And that's what the law says. What the Supreme Court did whenever that law was appealed is that they went and started striking words out of it and moving around. So they'd say Milford Township isn't, and adding language to it, which is not what courts are allowed to do, really. And so unfortunately that was appealed and never overturned. But once you have the judges in a separate branch of government rewriting law, they can say, look, this law is unconstitutional, send it back. That's something that they can do. But for them to take pen out and start striking and writing, that becomes legislating. And that we have several branches of government for a reason. So that's one of the challenges I think is out there, is that, redistricting, which you can, if you do it right, you can completely control the legislature, because you can decide how many seats each side has just based on the population number and the registration issue, and you can almost without fail do that. So it's a very dangerous road that we're on, where the judiciary has taken the position that they can rewrite laws, because if they can do that, then what's the point in the elected General Assembly? And so, say what you want about the General Assembly, but you can run into me at Berlin Pharmacy and tell me what you think and get rid of me. But do you think you're able to do that with a Pennsylvania Supreme Court justice? And the answer is probably not.
Right.
So I'm more answerable to you,
right.
Which means that, and that's one of the things that I think is a good thing. The General Assembly should be answerable to the people, and the judiciary is less answerable to the people because they're not writing the laws.
Right.
They're just supposed to be saying whether they're constitutional or not and interpreting that. So I think that's created a constitutional crisis in Pennsylvania because of that. And so our gerrymandering is real. It's happened, and unfortunately the courts were involved in it, and that's probably one of the bigger problems we have right now.
Yeah. So we want to see adequate representation for the rural community. I know we're not as densely populated, but when you look at that map of the 2024 election of all the counties that, or you just look at that map of votes blue or red, it's a red country with these little populations, and
Yeah, and I mean, we're still the way that they write. You can make the maps. The districts are equal in size, but the challenge is like are the some of the things you're supposed to take into account are really the communities of interest is what they call it, and so do we have more in common with pick your poison, but it would be putting drawing a straight line up from Upper Turkey Foot Township straight up to Johnstown and putting you in the same district. That would be weird, right? Yeah. Because Johnstown has very different concerns and issues than Upper Turkey Foot Township does. So that is some of the things that you don't want to see in a map. And I think that there's been some playing around with that to create some of these districts where they're not really competitive, and that's a problem.
At this point, I'm glad to see that our governor has at least stayed out of this, and maybe he hasn't. I don't know, like what Texas is doing, and now California says they're going to do some stuff. So are we staying out of this political football that's going on right now with the national gerrymandering conflict?
Well, so Pennsylvania just did ours, I think it was 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So we're in the middle of a cycle, so it's every 10 years. So we have a little while to do it. So I guess the opportunity wasn't there. I don't know what the governor would have done, but the opportunity wasn't available.
Yeah. Governor Shapiro, how do you feel about the job he's doing?
So the governor and I were in the General Assembly together, so we know each other. And personally, he and I, we have a good relationship, and I get along with him. I think that, my experience with him was that, he was very liberal in the General Assembly, especially compared to me. But I mean, that's not saying much. Most people are liberal compared to me, but the governor. The governor, I think, has his eyes firmly set on the White House, and so that's where he's governing towards, I guess. And he's very talented as a politician. Yeah. So I would say, he's probably the most talented I've ever been around, and so he's gonna everything that he does is thought out specifically for his where he wants to be. Again, I have a good rapport with him, but he and I don't agree on many things. Yeah. But we have that relationship. So, but I think he's going to be a force to contend with in a presidential election, the next presidential election.
Yeah, I don't honestly know a whole lot about him. The one thing I was disappointed in was whenever he signed that shell that with Kamala, that little political stunt where he gave his signature on the shell that was going to Ukraine, I think. Yeah. I'm like, come on, Pennsylvanians don't want you to sign shells going
Yeah, that's not. I think that was poorly played, and the governor has said that those of us like me, I'm a big supporter of we don't want men and women's sports, so that's an issue that's out there. We're trying to legislators like me are trying to stop that. That's one of my agenda items that I'm working on too. And he called us extremists for doing that. And I think that was probably a bridge too far.
Yeah.
I think he's on the wrong side of that issue pretty heavily.
That's a very small issue. I mean, 80-20. They say it's an 80-20 issue. Like, if it's 20%.
Yeah, I don't understand his position on that. To call us extremists, I'm still a little. That didn't sit well with me.
Yeah. The opposite would be extreme, right?
Well, I would say I think that we have an obligation to protect the girls and women that are playing in these sports. That's not okay. I mean, this thing where we live in a society where we don't know which bathroom to use is a problem.
Yeah. Well, I got 3 daughters, so it's it's important to me. And my middle daughter is going to be playing junior high soccer, and because enrollment at Rockwood is down. We can't fill a full junior high girls team or a boys team, which in Rockwood soccer is big.
Yeah, Rockwood soccer is big.
So now they're going to have a co-ed team. So, 13-year-old girls and 13-year-old boys can be very different. Yeah. Size, ability, it's obvious. So, and then I have to make a decision, she's okay with it. She wants to learn to play, and but I'm kind of just keeping it with taking it with a grain of salt at this point. Like, let's watch and see how it goes. Really, just for safety. I don't care if the kids want to play. I want them to play. I want them to have fun and get the experience. But it's not a trans issue. It's just now you have a co-ed issue at this level. I just want to make sure safety is taken into precaution for these young girls who are just starting something new. And you take a 13-year-old that's been playing a long time and they know how to slide, tackle, and push.
Right.
You could kick hard. I mean, these boys kick hard at that age. So you really got to watch. And I hate to see it. I hate to see them not be able to put together a girls or boys team. And but that it was shocking to find out, that the enrollment has gone down so far that they can't.
Well, like issues like that, obviously, they're not marginal issues. And, I think the vast majority of people, polling seems to indicate that we're correct, that they don't think men should be in women's sports. Like that's kind of one of those things. For me, like I have a bill that is that you have to get drug tested if you want welfare. If you want welfare benefits, you're drug tested. The thought process behind it is that, if you're going to work, you're a truck driver, you're working even in manufacturing process, your random drug testing is part of that.
Oh yeah, Carpenters Union, we got randomized.
So if you go to work and you're getting drug tested, why isn't it the person that's getting benefits, from the government has the same system? And, that serves multiple purposes. Accountability, make sure that if you do need help, we're getting you help, things like that. To me, it seems like that should be a common sense issue, but it is, again, viewed as an extremist view. I don't think it is. I think that that's more of a Harrisburg-centric position. I don't think that the people of Pennsylvania really view it that way.
No.
But, it's just so difficult to get things like that done, which is stupid. For me, that's just common sense. If you want that benefit, you should be subject to some oversight. But we're to the point now where, so much of our budget is tied up in welfare expenditures that it would, it puts me in a position where there's no way I could ever ask for a tax increase whenever you have a third of your state budget going to welfare benefits or whatever the percentage is right now. And so how can we possibly do that? So that's where I'm at with that issue, and things like the men and women's sports. It's just not
common sense.
Oh yeah, and I think there's, again, going back to that disconnect and what we've talked about just from the beginning, is that the people who don't know where hamburgers come from are trying to make decisions about stuff like that, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I feel like this younger culture right now is, I don't know, maybe I just feel like they're more aware of their health. Health is becoming important, and the food we eat has become important. So, I mean, by all means, I would rather support a local farmer selling beef and put that in my freezer than go buy it off the shelf from God knows where it came from.
Yeah, so, I'm actually helping another member. We have a member from Pittsburgh that she's been spearheading a campaign that's similar to the RFK campaign to try and take some of the chemicals out of the food, some of the things. And she'd been doing it before RFK was even really pushing that issue. And I think that is right. Something has shifted in society that we're eating things that probably shouldn't eat, and it bothers me a lot whenever a bag of Skittles in the United States and a bag of Skittles in Europe are two different things, but somehow we can't say it. The thing I learned about that in that whole process where we were working is that in order to get a chemical approved to be in the food through the FDA, all they have to do is hire a person to tell the FDA that it's safe. There's no oversight over it whatsoever. So you just essentially, you can get your own expert to say that it's safe, and then it becomes safe.
And there's no third-party oversight.
No, it's not. So it's very antiquated. I forget what year it was that was started, but that's how we ended up with whenever you look at an ingredient list on a food item that's a processed food item, it's longer than you want to read, and you're wondering what it is you're actually eating. So somehow we've got to get back to that, because certainly the health is a problem.
Oh
for
yeah,
us.
even our kids in schools, like grateful for our small school districts around here that really care about the kids, but the food pyramid's all messed up. Like, give some kids some French toast and syrup in the morning and a sugary yogurt or a cereal bar, and then tell them to sit still in a classroom for the next couple hours till they get to go outside and run that off. And don't be surprised why they're acting up or can't focus. And
Yeah, and even those issues we've learned are largely coming down from the federal government. There's of course the Obama era school food dictates that came down, and I've been one of the people that's been pushing to bring whole milk back, but again, there's some federal things that we have to overcome with that to do it.
I just talked to a lunch lady, and she's like, "Let's get whole milk in the school."
I'm with her. I think it hurts our dairy farmers because you're teaching kids that milk isn't very good, and milk, whole milk is good. Yeah. Like, it's just if you give me water that's deep white, I don't really want it either. That's no fun. Yeah. So anyhow, I think that those are some of the things that we need to start, correcting on, and I think you can do it, but it's nice to have, I think, a different perspective in the federal government at this point. There's been some help there that's been good. But anyway, you're fighting a multi-front battle all the time. It's just hard.
Yeah. Who are some of your closest colleagues in Harrisburg? From what counties or districts do you feel like Somerset County really meshes with?
All of my neighbors, to be perfectly honest, like the representatives that circle us are really really great. Ryan Warner, he has right over the line here at Seven Springs. Charity Krupa. She has the remainder of Fayette County, and then you have Jim Rigby to the north. He's great. And, of course, one of my closest colleagues that I've known since the very beginning is Jesse Topper in Bedford County. And, Jesse's now the minority leader, the Republican leader in the House, and he and I get along great, and he's done a great job. He just started this year as that minority leader role, and that's a difficult job because you're trying to stop a system, because whenever you're in the majority, you control the calendar, and so nothing gets voted without their permission. And it's a little bittersweet for me because whenever we lost the majority, we still had a majority for a brief period of time, and I was the Republican designee for Speaker. We had a floor vote on that, and there was a deal that was cut to actually nominate a Democrat for Speaker at that time, and we could have probably done some of the things that, in that brief couple month period. Like, for me, one of the priorities that I had that I wanted to try and run was the constitutional amendment for voter ID. Yeah. I think voter ID is crucial for us to make sure that you have an election system that has integrity. You can't buy a can of spray paint or 22 shells without, providing an ID, but somehow we're allowed to vote without it, which is just crazy to me.
Yeah, I echo that for sure.
So anyway, for me, right before we lost that majority, I was, possibly one of the people that would have been able to run that agenda that would have been nice to have. But unfortunately, again, we had a deal that some of the Republicans cut to put a Democrat in for Speaker for that period of time, and it was a difficult thing for me to watch, and we lost that opportunity because of that. So now you don't have voter ID in Pennsylvania because of, first and foremost, we passed it once and the courts overturned it. But then, again, back to activist judges, which is, I think, a big problem. Yeah. But then, secondly, we had the opportunity again and kind of, squandered that too. So I would have been very pleased to lead that charge.
Yeah, right. We hear about all these things like on the federal level, but it really does come down to local elections, people there to represent your ideals that go and actually make this happen at a state level. And you take a state like Pennsylvania, what they call swing state. If Pennsylvania did it, I would think there would be quite a few to follow.
Yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania is bigger than a lot of countries, right? Like, you're talking about a $50 billion state budget. Like, it's a monster of a state. A lot of people, a lot of natural resources, and it could be a better economic driver than it is. But we've again fighting some of that fight between the dichotomy between that urban rural divide is a lot of the challenge.
How has becoming a lawyer helped you in this job?
It's helped a lot. There's a lot of people that think it's made up of lawyers, but there's very few lawyers in the General Assembly. And so when you go to write a law or a bill, or you want to propose a bill, and I ran into this a lot more whenever I was at the beginning of my tenure there, but you have to get permission essentially to get someone to help you write it if you don't know how to write it. Mm-hmm. With the training that I have, I'm fortunate enough that I can, if I have to, I can write it myself. So I don't need any permission. I can just work for the people that I'm elected by. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a huge advantage for me to be able to if I need to write it, I can write it myself. Not saying that there are non-lawyers that can't do that, because there's some real good ones and people that know what they're doing. But for me, it's been a great help that way. I think that law schools, though, generally at this point, they've become political too, and so you're seeing a lot of lawyers come out with a very different idea about how the world should work than I think is reflected in Somerset County generally, and so I think that's one of the challenges is the field of law, and then in turn the judicial candidates, because those come from that same path. Obviously, you're getting a very liberal bent to it, and I think that's probably not good. I mean, and that's how we end up with some of the political activism and things like we see from the bench at this point.
Do you think, this is probably an obvious question, but do you think we need more young conservative lawyers?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would be great to see that, but I mean, the system's sort of set up to filter them out. Like, you don't want to do that. It's hard to go there and get, your head beat in with maybe some policies that you don't agree with every day for 7 years. I mean, it's a long time to do that, and so anyhow, I would say that, that's hard to overcome because it's just, why would you want to do that?
Yeah. Any good schools that you would recommend for a conservative?
I'm kind of out of that loop at this point, and I think it's just one of those things that you have to, if you have your own value set going into it, you can probably preserve it.
Okay.
But you got to work hard at it.
Strong-minded person with clear convictions and a worldview.
Yeah, you know what's right already. But the system then will filter you out a little, and that's the hard part, is you're graded to some extent on, opinion too.
Yeah, so. That is tough. Yeah. So, it's tough for kids. My middle daughter, she wants to be a lawyer.
Oh, okay. Well,
and she's she come up with this on her own.
Okay.
We talk all the time about ways to do it, or she's got time, and who knows, she could change her mind 3 times until then. And she's like, I want to be a Supreme Court justice. I'm like, okay, wow. I said, well, you can do anything you want to do. You have to work really hard at it.
Right.
But she's very righteous minded. And she's not afraid. She's very observant, quiet. But when it comes to right is wrong and wrong, she knows, and she'll hold me to account, or it's kind of fun to watch her and watch her mind think. And maybe, girl, just keep your nose clean and work hard. And these kids can do anything right now. I think there's so much opportunity for young kids right now. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like there's a lot of opportunity?
I mean, it's great. I was talking to my buddy the other day, and you and I are in the same age. If somebody told us that we could make $20 an hour, working, we wouldn't ever, that we would just kept working. Wow, right? Like that was amazing. But it's
now you can go to Seven Springs and run the arcade. You make $20 an hour.
That's correct. So I mean, like, if you, with those opportunities out there, it's sometimes difficult to justify the college thing, and that's why I try and tell people is like, well, college has made itself more expensive and less valuable because they've made it easier to attain, so its value has gone down, but its cost has gone up almost exponentially since we went to do it, and then somewhat before that, as far as our age goes. So I would say, that's a hard part of it. But like with your daughter, I think, a strong moral compass is really the answer. And I mean, my compass will show true north always, unless it has interference. As long as you're strong enough to overcome that interference, that's, I think, where we're at. But I mean, again, I try and think that everybody has a different perspective. They grew up differently. And so I try and be understanding of a different approach. But there are some things like I said, I just, we talked about, women, men and women's sports. Those are things like, come on, you can't tell me that this makes sense to you, and be intellectually honest with yourself. So there are some of those things that are just sort of non-negotiable, I think. So.
How you wonder, like, somebody has to be paying you to be that dumb.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it doesn't make any sense to me. I can't make it make sense.
Yeah, well, but neither can most people. So, any future plans in politics? What do you? I mean,
I always say you want to make God laugh, make plans, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
For me, I really do. I consider it an honor to do this thing, and from my standpoint, like, I try not to measure my success. Like, I talk to people, and there's so many laws, so many things, and no one knows all the laws and regulations out there. It's just too much to overcome. So, people ask, well, how many laws did you pass? I've said, well, you should want me to pass none. It's how many laws did you stop is the question that I think is the thing that you want to talk about. And so for me, I pride myself on trying to kill bad ideas.
Yeah.
So, like, if you do something, you're trying to do something stupid. And again, that's why the fuel tax hurt me so much, is because I did fail to stop it. And, that was years ago at this point. But at the same time, we're still feeling that. And I still think it was a mistake. And I think that that's hard to overcome. But for me, that's the fight that's out there. It's just trying to stop. Because you think about it, in any given session, you have these there's literally thousands of bills, but they're really ideas, and most of them are bad. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what you're trying to guard against, is all these really, really bad ideas.
I hadn't really thought of it like that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what it's about. Like, some of the gun confiscation things and things like that are just so bad, and you're trying to protect the Constitution. It's very difficult. I'm a conservative, unabashedly and unapologetically, but being a conservative is hard because if you lose, you never gain the ground. So if they ban something, ban magazines in excess of 20 rounds, you'll never get it back. Like, there's no way to recover from that. I mean, very infrequently. I mean, you could conceivably, but the chances of that are very slim. But if you're, liberal, I guess, and not in the traditional sense, but in the modern sense of it, you can fail every time and just keep coming. Yeah. And you have nothing to lose because you're trying to move the ball, and I'm just trying to be left alone.
And they tend to fail upward.
Well, yeah. And so I think that that's the difficult part, and what you have to do politically is that you really can't miss if you're conservative, and it's hard to find the issues where you can be, liberal, I guess, from the stance of, like, you're moving the ball. One of the places that I've found that I can move the ball or try to move the ball, and that we've been successful at, is, Pennsylvania has the only. I joke it's Utah and Pennsylvania, so the Quakers and the Mormons, but we have the only really true state-controlled liquor system where they're not only regulating it but selling it, which I think is an inherent conflict of interest. So you have the state source system in Pennsylvania that's run by the government, and then it's supposed to be regulated by the government. That makes no sense to me.
That's why liquor stores didn't close during COVID.
Yeah, so but I mean that's just inherently foolish to me. You can't do both. Yeah. Like, if you're going to be selling it, you have to be regulating. Somebody else has to regulate it. We have that system, but the interesting thing, and back to trying to show about, you can continue to try and chip away at that system because they're trying to hold the ground. And for me, I think that the system needs to go, and I voted many times to do that. And you can keep coming and coming and coming, and that's why you've seen the lessening of that control. Not very long ago, you couldn't, go into a convenience store and get a 6-pack of beer. Mm-hmm. That was not something that you could do a few years ago. We've lessened that control. Now you can go and get these ready-to-drink cocktails, which is like a canned, vodka and tonic or whatever it is. And you can go into a convenience store, an R-licensed establishment, and get those now. So we're trying to slowly, loosen that grip there. And so that's one place you can find some movement in. The other place in Pennsylvania, and just to go back to energy policy for a second, is that In a state like Texas, you can go and shop for your electricity. Like you go drive down an interstate in Texas, and it says buy your electricity from Tim Ladich Electric Company. We're the best, or whatever the case may be. In Pennsylvania, you can shop, but it's not the aggressive shopping that it is there. And so, in Pennsylvania, I think that the deregulation essentially of that electric system and the generation supply is something that we can do better. You're already seeing that because Pennsylvania deregulated, our cost of electricity compared to some of the states that didn't is lower. But at the end of the day, we can do better. Mm-hmm. So that's another place where you can make those incremental changes that are really better for the consumer. The only argument against it at this point is that, the people that want to stop it are saying that the people of Pennsylvania aren't smart enough to do it, which I think is just counter-capitalist and since when are we this nanny state? That's not what I believe in. I don't know. I think that people are smart enough to buy their own car. They're smart enough to buy their own electricity. Yeah. So,
which would result in cheaper electricity.
Well, theoretically, one of the interesting things I found out in that process is one of the most right now in Pennsylvania, one of the most popular products is what's called Solar Days Free Nights. So that's a product you can buy where you essentially pay a ton of money for solar electricity, and then at night your electricity is free because the demand is lower, ostensibly. So, but anyway, that's one of the most popular products. If you want to buy that, I'm for you buying that. I'm a yes. Go ahead and do it. But for me, I think that full deregulation of the market, making people, make their own decisions, allowing people to make their own decisions is one of the things that we could do better. Yeah. And so I'd love to see that happen.
So talk to us a little bit about the process of getting this state budget and what you're dealing with there, and so how that just affects everyday Somerset residents.
Right. So of course the state budget's due date is June 30th. That's whenever the fiscal year ends and starts is the next day, and so it's supposed to be done. And apparently, in the legislature, the June 30th thing always takes people by surprise. They didn't see it coming. It's very peculiar. Yeah.
We better make sure our taxes are paid by a certain date,
I'm sure they'd be very understanding if we didn't pay our taxes. Yeah. So, but anyway, they ended up, of course we blew past that budget deadline, no end in sight. But one of the battlegrounds with it is the governor wants another, let's just say $200 million for mass transit. It's a lot of money. Yeah. And the governor just flexed, I think is what it's called. I think it was $153 or some million of federal dollars that were supposed to be used for our roads and bridges here in rural Pennsylvania, and applied it to SEPTA, which is the Philadelphia Transit system. And it's a bailout. 17% of their costs are covered by their fares. So only 17% of the budget is paid for by fares. The rest of it is paid for by us in subsidies in some form or fashion, whether that's coming out of various sales tax, fuel tax, etc. It's all coming out of our pockets to subsidize those systems, and that's really the sort of the linchpin of the budget battle this year. Is that legislators like me are unwilling to help pay for that anymore because it's already A, failing, B is, and I'd love to play you the voicemail message that I got from a lady this morning that. But it has too many expletives in it. But it is she's critical of me calling it a welfare system, but it is a welfare system because it doesn't pay for itself. It's a welfare system. Whenever you're paying to have people drive around, making, and the bus drivers are getting full pension and benefits to drive around and do all of this stuff, drive an empty bus around really is what it amounts to. And then the buses are so dangerous and dirty that nobody wants to ride on them anyway. That's a failed system. Yes. Why would we dump more of your tax dollars into that failed system? And that's where the governor and I and others in the General Assembly are at loggerheads. He wants that done, has already taken our tax dollars to do it. So how many roads and bridges did we not get done with the money that he'd already dumped into it, plus the money that's already there? So now to increase that by hundreds of millions of dollars is just a non-starter for me. Yeah. And so that's probably the crux of the battle. There's, of course, we're arguing over the spend number all the time and the amount of money that you put in. But what that really amounts to is that, a lot of programs are not getting funded. Some of them are bad programs, and that's okay. But some of them are things that we need to get funded. And there's, of course, money that comes to all of our schools in the area that they need, and those. That gets really critical around October for them. Some of them, it's already critical, but really critical in October. So, we need to get something done, but, the governor's obviously very, very much interested in trying to get the bailout for SEPTA.
Yeah, that's what Mark wanted me to ask. Because that will affect these local school districts, correct?
Correct. I mean, I believe when you talk to guys like Mark Bowers that was just here, and you're doing a podcast with him. He's a great superintendent, but I believe if you talk to them, October is when things start really getting sticky for them, and they have to, really borrow money and do some wild things to try and make stuff happen, and that's not what we're looking to do.
Right.
So for me, it's crucial we get it done, but at the same time, it's also crucial that I don't do it in a way that
compromises.
Well, I mean, to tax my people more, to subsidize something that's clearly failing and clearly is a bad policy. It's just not tenable.
Yeah. So we hear a lot about the federal government operating, on a huge debt.
Mm-hmm.
What about the state of PA? Are we fiscally responsible? Where does our state budget and how do we stack up against the federal government as far as the way we handle our budget?
Well, they both suck, but they, the federal government can obviously print money. That's a different thing than we have. Pennsylvania can borrow money and do bonds, which I've been, steadfast against for years. That's not something that we should be doing. So if your family, whenever you sit together and at the kitchen table and try and figure out your budget, you don't say, well, this is how much we want to spend, and that's how you start it. You're like, this is how much we have to spend.
Yeah.
And government does it backwards, and that's the problem, is that it starts the wrong way. So I try to argue over the spend number. I learned from some of my conservative colleagues over the years that is where the battle has to be fought. Mm-hmm. So for me, the spend number is the answer. Like, how do you make sure you control that? But no, there's debt in Pennsylvania. The bond attorneys are the real winners in that, and the taxpayers are the losers in it. So that's the challenge. The federal government runs on a whole different set of rules, obviously, but they both are bad in their own right.
When you got into, when you first got into your role in Harrisburg, was there a part of you that was like, well, I wish the taxpayers really knew how much control they had? Or do you think that we, just for example, I see my kids, I'm like, what don't you like about school? Well, speak up. Let them know if there's something that you want to change. You really have more power than you think. Like when you're a kid in school, you really don't realize actually how much power these kids have to at least speak up and make their voices heard if there's an issue that's going on. I feel like we take for granted actually sometimes how much power we really have, and we don't unite to make that. Do you realize that when you go to Harrisburg? Wow, if they really knew how much power they had, could they do more, or is the system working?
I think that's part of the reason there's been such a concerted effort to divide our country. The division in our country is great right now. We lack the, I liken it back to when we were much younger and September 11th occurred, and I feel like that was the last time our country was truly united in purpose, right? Since then, I don't think we have. If we were truly united in purpose, I'd say the answer is yes, you'd have the power to do it. But right now, every time someone speaks up, another person just to contradict them almost knocks them down. Mm-hmm. And so there's no united purpose there. And that makes it hard for us to exert our influence as a people. And so that's probably one of the challenges that I think we have. The other component that whenever I got elected that shocked me and still shocks me and bothers me more than anything is the power of the unelected bureaucrat. So even me, like I try and people ask, well, what do you do when you're not in Harrisburg? And the vast majority of it is that I spend my time trying to get the bureaucrats to do the job that they were supposed to do in the first place, or in the alternative to not do the job wrongly that's actually hurting my people. And so that's where that unelected bureaucrat, again, you can get rid of me, you can fire me, and that's a good thing. That's the way that it's supposed to work. But how do you fire that guy?
Yeah.
How do you fire the unelected bureaucrat that's actually shutting your business down?
Is that a lobbyist? Is that or
no? I mean, like an unelected bureaucrat, like a person at DEP. So you have someone in, not to pick someone at DEP, but you have someone at DEP. They've worked there for 25 years, and they have the ability to unilaterally shut down your job by issuing an order that you're not even allowed to contest until 20 days later, and you're already out of business at that point. So how does that happen? They come and shut your job down. They do that. That's the thing that I think is the disconnect in government, is that government was much smaller at one point, didn't have that kind of power and authority, and that's the way I would like it to be again. So if we could get back to that, that would be the change. But I think that's probably the shocker, is that even I don't have the ability to stop that. Like there's, I'm the person that's been elected by the people of Somerset County to go to Harrisburg, but I have some bureaucrat here that's shutting down a business in Somerset County that nobody wants shut down, but they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, if you want to have any control over this bureaucrat, then you have to basically defund that program.
Right, and like to defund all. Legislatively, there's a line for DEP. So you defund all of DEP. That's really not something you could get the votes to do, even if you did want to do it.
But to shrink it or stop the regulatory.
So holding that person accountable, then you have to start from the top and try and come back down, and then that's very difficult, and there's politics involved in that. So
what chaos.
So that's one of the things that, people call it different things, but, for me, I call it the unelected bureaucrat, where it's that state system that is just so onerous and so controlling and has so much power that it's almost unstoppable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've learned a ton already, Carl. So I mean, I appreciate it, and I hope you'll come back again sometime.
Great.
We can talk about the issues that are at the forefront. And I feel like you got your finger on the pulse of Somerset County. So keep it up. We're grateful for that representation for sure.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, I got a gift for you.
Oh man, look at this.
Your Route 281 podcast hat. So
that's awesome.
If you see somebody else wearing that, you'll know they were in the studio.
I'll do that. Right?
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. All right.
Yeah. So will we see you over at the fair at all?
Oh yeah, of course. So we have a mobile office over there. So if you have any needs, we have that at the fair. So that'll be great. And hopefully we get some people out there to support the kids, and lots of buyers on the auction day.
Yeah, so I love that. I love watching these kids. I grew up taking animals to the fair. I don't know if you did, but it was fun for me, and my kids are involved in it. They'll all show dairy cattle over there, so they enjoy it. And I do like to see all the kids involved in getting dirty, playing, caring for an animal, just. Having fun.
Put the phones down, right?
Exactly. And they're over there and they're washing a cow or showing, and they take such pride in it. And it's just kids being kids. I love seeing that.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a good thing.
It's a little piece of Americana, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. What we need to preserve.
Yep.
For sure.
That's right.
So, Carl, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.